Well, hello and welcome to today's Alpha Anywhere Demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software, and I'm pleased to present Dion McCormick, no relation, who is our lead solutions engineer. Today, Dion will be going over, I believe, the details section of the list control. Might be wrong on that, but we'll see. But more importantly, he's here to take your questions, so go ahead and type those questions into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. So let's get started. Hello, let me take you off mute here, Dion.
There you go.
All right, welcome.
How are you doing today?
Doing great, thanks, man.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. We have a really detailed kind of session today because I've gotten a lot of questions from clients and customers how to optimize their offline applications, and that's really through the list control. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that today. Anyway, let me go ahead and show my screen, unless it's already showing, and I'm not aware of that. There we go. So thank you, everybody. As always, our key goal here is to try and answer any and all questions you have. If you're hitting roadblocks, get you beyond that. So if you mind, take time to go to the GoToWebinar control panel in the questions section. Enter your questions there. Dave and the team will be monitoring those questions. And as we come up with different questions, we'll try to address them in this presentation. If we're not, then what we're going to do is take them down, follow up on them. So our goal is to make sure that all questions are from there. So take that time to put your questions in there. We'll be following up from there. And they can be on the topic for today or other topics that may be burning in your ideas that you need information on. So with that, I do want to also give everybody a heads up that we still have availability for Alpha DevCon 2017. I know we're in the summer months now. We've gotten into the summer area, so it's coming up very rapidly. You can find out more information at alphasoftware.com/devcon 2017, and on there we have information on the speakers that we have coming up, the training that's going to take place at the DevCon. We have a contest, which we're very excited about, can't wait, and you can register right now and see the further agenda on this webpage. And again, that's alphasoftware.com/devcon 2017. And we've got a great list of people who are going to be attending, along with a great lineup of speakers. There'll also be developers there, so if you've ever had any deep burning questions, they're available for you to buttonhole and talk to them, and they'd love to engage with our clients and with the people who are using the technology. And there's going to be a lot of really cool stuff that's going to be demonstrated and shown at the DevCon coming in the future. So it's really a great way for you to kind of come up to speed on where Alpha is, but more importantly is understand where Alpha is going. So check it out, alphasoftware.com/devcon 2017. So the topic for today is going to be about the list control detail view, and specifically things and functions that are involved with that that allow you to optimize the operation of your offline application. So, the core of any offline application is the list control, because it does a couple things. One is that it first and foremost presents data and allows people to interact with data through the interface there, so you can lay out the interface to show the data there. But more importantly, behind the scenes, the list control does the connection to the back-end data source, gathering that information, bringing it down locally, and then storing that information locally and managing that for you. And when you're in the process of editing data, it's a combination of the list control and the detail view working together. We also have the form view controls and other pieces, but that list control with the detail view is the heart of how that interaction occurs. So when you want to go in and optimize or sort of change the behavior of how disconnected applications operate, the place you're going to do it is in the list control, and more importantly in the detail view. And so what I'm going to go through today is about 4 or 5 things that I've come across that I've used on projects and working with people, so that you'll know kind of where things are and you can go in and experiment and change and modify from there. Very, very important. So I'm calling it tips and tricks for the detail view. And the most important thing is you'll see in a moment when we open up the list builder, that magic tab when you've enabled the detail view is right here, the second to last one. And this is where we're going to be spending most of our time in today. Now, from a quick overview of what we would like to do, we're going to cover the following things today. First is the synchronization policy, specifically how you set policy to tell the list in the detail view how it should do its synchronization. Also with that is something called server-side events, meaning that after synchronization happens or before or during, you have some opportunities to grab that, and I'll explain a little bit more how we use that, and more importantly is how you can access that from that standpoint there. Also want to talk a little bit more of customization of the behavior and how it works. A very important one that is used very often, which you may already be aware of, but the ability to submit location information and store that when people are saving records in the list view, or I'm sorry, in the detail view, which is really critical for field apps, because you may want to be able to say, hey, this person's out, they're doing like an inspection of a property. When they save the data, you want to actually see them saving it at the location of the property for proof, for history, for managing personnel, things like that. You don't want them going to the Starbucks and updating their inspection list and never knowing if they actually attended where they should have gone. And then the last piece is talking a little bit about media and other link files, which is really gets into the domain of PhoneGap. It's required to handle that, but kind of show you where that is. So I'm going to walk through these. Won't take too long. So again, while I'm going through these, obviously if something isn't clear, please put something in the Q&A or in the questions section. And if there's actually a topic that we aren't covering but you would like to get information on, do that at the same time there. So with that, I'm going to go back over into my development environment. And I'm just going to grab a UX that I created here a while back. And let's go ahead and bring it up here. So this is a standard UX component. For people who are new to Alpha, the UX component is the heart of our form system, and when you're building mobile applications and or desktop web, but really mobile ones, you'll be using that from there. And we have some standard panel navigator, etc. But in here, just to show you, we have a list control here and then a set of fields that are going to be part of my detail view, and also some buttons that take and work with that list from there. So again, we have our list control, and it's working in conjunction with a set of fields, and this is quote unquote considered the detail view area. Unlike the form view, there's actually not a control called detail view. In the list in a few moments, I'll explain how we link these fields to the list, and so it treats these items as what's called the detail view. And therefore it synchronizes or integrates the list control with it, so when you select an item in the list control, these items automatically update for you, and when you save or edit or anything like that, the information in here flows back into the list. So they work together to achieve that offline viewing, editing, updating, inserting within that from that standpoint. But we're going to spend most of our time in the list control, and these items are right here. So let's go ahead. I'm going to double click on the list control to take a look at the configuration. So I double click on that. Now I'm into my list control. And you'll notice that I've, in this case, like we've done many times before, our backend data source is SQL, meaning we're going to a SQL. In this case, we're grabbing, let's see what it is, from the customer table information. We have a primary key, etc. But the important thing is in my list properties here, there's this second field right here called he has detail view, because you may have a list where all you're using it is to present data. You don't have to have a detail view. A detail view is nice because it allows you to edit that information and do the other pieces, but you're not required it. So in this case, I have it enabled. Excuse me. And so I have a detail view, and when I do that, it automatically shows this tab here. If I disable that, this tab will disappear because we really don't need to match the detail view. So let's go to the detail view screen. As you can see, there's a lot of pieces here, but we're going to take them step by step through each one of these. The first thing I like to talk about is when you're building a detail view, there's actually two ways you can build the detail view. Detail view number one is, and most of the time I use this as a field map. The idea is I'm going to map things, my fields in my list control, to fields on the user interface. And that's the concept of a field map. And in order to do that mapping, you'll notice we have a second row here called Detail View Field Map. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up here. And you'll notice that we have a list here where on the left are my items in my list control. So these are all the fields that have been selected to come down from the backend data source and presented in the list control. On the right are my controls on the UX component. Now, you'll see I auto-generated so the names are the same, but that's not necessarily true. You can name your fields anything you want to, and then you can manually map these two together. So I can go, oh, company name. If I double click on company name, it basically shows me a list of fields in my UX and say, okay, in this case, company name. Or I could create a new one on the fly, or I could unmap this field. Up to you from that standpoint. Now, I often, as a general practice, name my fields the same as the list control column. And the reason why is this little button down here called Auto Map Fields, is that if I click this button, and let's go ahead and do that real quick. I'm going to unmap that field, and I'm going to unmap this field right here. So now those fields are not connected. If I were to run this, then when the list control clicked on it, only these fields here would be populated. These would be ignored. So in this case, I could go through here and then say, okay, customer ID, but I can do a real quick thing here and just say auto map fields, and it will automatically look at the list control columns, look at my fields, and if it finds a match on the name, it'll put them together. So again, general practice, you don't have to do it, but I tend to name my fields the same as I name my control columns, and actually when you auto-generate those fields, Alpha will do that for you, but mainly because it's easier to do that. And if I do want to, I could, let's go ahead and unmap that field here and unmap that field. We have another thing here called create new UX control for all unmapped fields. So let's say you did an update. Let's say you had built this and then a week later someone went in and added these two new fields. So you've gone into list control and say, okay, here's my list of things to go down, but you'll notice we're missing a couple controls on my user interface because they didn't exist before. It's like a version 2. Then I could just click this button right here and it would automatically generate two text boxes for me, one for address and region, put them on there, and then I could rearrange them and put them from there. So very handy kind of capabilities built into it. But again, I auto map the fields there. So once I've done that, I now have my field map. Now, as I was mentioning before, another method is to have a container and within that fields, and then it just automatically looks to the container in the fields. I don't use that very much. I like the field map, gives me a lot of very fine level granular control, but that's how I set that up. So again, I've enabled the detail view. I've told it I want to use a field map. I've mapped my fields from the list control columns to the fields that are on my user interface, and I'm good to go. Now, let's go into a very powerful point here called table properties. So one of the key things I want to talk about is called synchronization policy. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on this. Oops, I'm sorry. I want to go here. I'm sorry. I'm going to get to that in a moment. Synchronization policy. So it's the fourth item down. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on that. And you'll see there's a fair amount of verbiage in here. And actually take the time, read through it. It explains all these people here. But there's two checkboxes: perform client to server and perform server to client synchronization. And you'll notice the first one is when the user saves the edits, and this is when the client server synchronization is performed. So the first one, the way that works is that if I'm in my, and let me jump out of this real quick, if I'm running and I've selected a row, it's going to automatically populate these fields for me. And let's say I go in and edit a field and I click the save button. Now what that's doing is it's running this little piece of JavaScript that basically takes the values of these fields and puts them back into the list control. So I've edited it so it says, okay, I'm going to look at my fields, find out which ones are dirty, and then update my list control to say, hey, list control, for this row, these fields are now have been changed. Now under there is a huge amount of stuff going on, meaning that the list control goes, oh, okay, I'm going to store that. I'm going to remember what it originally was because now I know that you have an offline change, and therefore when I go to synchronize, I know which records are there. So even though it's a simple literally 2 lines of code, there's a bunch of stuff that goes on there. But once I've saved that, I can actually enable a function, and a lot of my clients do this, where I say, perform the client to server synchronization when user saves edits to a row nonetheless. Now, the cool thing about that is that if I do that, it's going to automatically try to do a synchronize the moment I save that record. And it says, oh, I'm online, I have connection, it goes ahead and does that. So the nice thing about that is then your user doesn't have to remember to do a synchronization, and they'll maybe see a little orange caret there for a moment and then it'll disappear. So they get almost real-time updates. And a lot of my clients tend to use that because they want to make sure that anything happening in the field, they get as much real-time activity going back to the back end as possible, mainly because they want to see activity levels, they want to make sure that data is on the back end, all those pieces here. Now, you don't have to do this. You can rely on it, say either the client has to do the synchronization, or more importantly, you could set it up where you have another script that looks every 5 minutes and says, oh, if there's any changes, way to go from there. Now, the only downside of this is every time you save a record, it's going to automatically call the server. And so there's a little lag there as it goes and does that. And if it doesn't find a connection, it's smart enough to say, hey, sorry, I can't do it. It keeps the change local, meaning that the data has not been lost. And then the next time it does the sync and it retries it. So it's really intelligent from that standpoint. But a lot of people enable that because they can say the moment someone out in the field, depending on your application, if you're in a mine or out in the middle of nowhere, then yeah, this would get annoying because you're not going to have connections anytime. It's going to fail every time. But if you're a person and they're in the city and they're doing deliveries and drop-offs, then this could be very valuable because you essentially can be getting this real-time information coming back. Now, the second one here is called perform a server-to-client synchronization. And this is a very important one. The idea behind this is when you say synchronize, the system, and actually let me go ahead and show you that here. When I click the synchronize button right now, you'll see that it's doing a save list edits, and in there it then synchronizes the data from there. Now, what's going on is it's taking the changes that you have made locally and it's pushing them up to the server, comparing them and finding if it can do the inserts, updates, etc. So it's moving the data from your local mobile up, but in that scenario, it's not bringing the data down. So if you want to, you can enable this right now, and what will happen is the moment it sends the data up to the server to update the server, it's also going to requery the data on the server and bring it down. And that's kind of nice. So like if someone creates a new record on the back end, and you want to see that new record, then it will automatically synchronize and bring that data back down. So you get a more reliable. Now the downside is kind of very similar to what we talked about before, is that now instead of just pushing the stuff up, which is very quick, very fast because it's a delta kind of operation, you're also waiting for the server to look at all the information and bring it back down and update your list. So there is a little bit of a performance penalty that you pay for that. So you have to just decide on your application whether you like it. I kind of like it because now I know my local data is updated. And also, if I have a situation, let's say I have a dispatch app where people are out in the field delivering goods, and I want to be able to, on the fly, push out these delivery requests, I can just enable that, and then every time they do a sync, I know that what's going to happen is their local system's going to be updated, and any new requests to them will be downloaded and available for them. But again, you do pay a penalty, and there's other methods to do these things like that. If you don't check that, you can just have this little, you can run this little piece of JavaScript on another, like when they log in or whatever, and that will also achieve the same value. So that's synchronization policy. One is that when you save and edit it to row and list, it automatically tries to sync. Second one is that when you sync, it pushes the stuff up, but then it immediately tries to pull down any new information and updates and pull it into your local system. So read through them, a lot of good detail here, and that explains it hopefully more from there. So we talked about synchronization policy. Next, I want to pop down here and talk about server-side events. And this is really cool. And this was just added a few releases ago. The idea is that synchronization is really nice because it is automatic. It just kind of handles it and does it for you. But I found in certain applications, there's sort of some post-processing that needs to be done. And in particular, I'm working with a particular application where once a person in the field has updated information in the back end, they want to trigger a whole bunch of notifications because maybe someone's created a new request or a delivery has been made. And they don't want to do that on the mobile side because they want to keep their mobile side pretty simple and clean with a lot of clutter, plus you don't want to have to do a lot of things. You want to have that central point to manage all these pieces. So with there's some events in here. So you can go after Synchronize. On Synchronize and it explains it right down here. But after Synchronize, you can run an XBasic call that will run a piece of XBasic code on the back end that then allows you to do anything you want. In the case of this notification, it looks at all the current updates and says, oh, are there any new data, anything we need to do? And then it sends out any appropriate notifications through Twilio, email, in-app, etc. And then after Synchronize record is on an individual record kind of scenario. So this server-side events is very powerful because it allows you to kind of add some intelligence on the back end so that every time someone out in the field synchronizes, you can do it. Like here's a simple one. Every time someone synchronizes, you could run a little piece of code that writes to a log file that just says, hey, this thing's been synchronized. So you can start monitoring how often and how many times people are synchronizing in the field, something as simple as that, or you can have something much more complex from that scenario. Now to set these up, you have a little button here and you put in your function name, like do my stuff, and then I can create a function prototype, and again, and here's all the documents of how do I get the information. It actually gives you the data that's been synchronized, so you can do very detailed things. It can actually tell you there were errors, how many records were updated, etc., and that's all in there. So the idea is once this happens, now out in the field, this after synchronize will occur. Now one thing about this that I want to give you a caution is that the after synchronize is done in sort of sync or in process, meaning that the system syncs, it calls that process, that function, and then after that function is done, then it completes the sync stuff from there. So the idea behind it is that you got to be careful that if you have a very long-running process, it's going to make the sync seem longer because it's waiting to get the information back down. So in that case, there's some tricks you can do with Alpha where you can spawn a thread and run a bunch of stuff without, sort of say, oh, I've got the information, I'm going to run it in this other process and come back. But just get it there. But most of the time, you're doing very simple, fast kind of scenarios. So it works very simply, and that's called server-side events. And those are very powerful because it allows you a real fine level of control over what happens on the server side. Now, customization, we have a whole bunch of other little customization fields. Like, for instance, we can go in here and I can talk about like what things to update. I can add debugging info. In here, I have a huge amount of control over, for instance, how do I tell the user there's a conflict? So you can see here's the right conflict resolution items. This is the terms that are using here. You can change that and modify that to your heart's desire. So in here, even if there's database errors, what's going on, it's going to let you adjust that there. So that's in the customization section and basically allows you to better align your communication to your end client. So instead of saying record was not updated, maybe you could say delivery request was not updated, or the drop-off was not updated. You can kind of tune the terminology so they go, oh, I don't get it. What's a record? You can say, oh, yeah, my delivery record didn't get updated, or my delivery information didn't get updated, and pieces from there. And that's called customization there. Now, the other two, which are really cool, is submit location information. So with that in mind, I'm going to shrink this here. Down here, you'll notice right here, other properties, submit location information. And if I go like that, then when the sync occurs, when the detail view it's going to submit that information. Now, you'll notice down here it says if you check this, the user is going to be prompted for permission, because obviously the app is now asking for the person's location, so they're going to be aware for it. If it's a PhoneGap app, that'll be done once and then you're good to go and golden. If you're a mobile web browser app, it could be asked a few other times from that standpoint. So this submits location information. But what's very important is this just says perform the thing. You still have to tell it on how it's going to track that information. So in conjunction with the submit location information, I'm going to go up here to table properties. And this is where we talk about more detail of the table. For instance, what is the primary key of the table so that the detail view understands how to update the information in these. I can actually say allow insert, update, etc. But down here, very importantly here, is the geography fields. And this is super information. And you'll see there's this store the local information when the record is saved. And so you can go in here, and this is where you say, you define where your location field is, latitude and longitude. So you have to tell the system's smart enough to say, I'm going to go talk to the hardware, grab your latitude and longitude and put it in your database, but you need to tell me what columns in that list control, i.e. database, you want to do it. And very important, you'll notice there's latitude and longitude, and then there's location field. Latitude and longitude are the numerical areas that give you the intersection of where you are on the planet. A location field is usually a field in your database of type geometry, and that's a more sophisticated field on what you do there, and that more sophisticated field allows you to do things like searching on areas, etc. And each database has their own type of geometry. SQL Server's got a little different from MySQL, from Oracle, so you have to do a little research here. But the cool thing about it is that you can store both the latitude and longitude and the location field at the same time. And the real cool thing about that is once you've done that, then it allows you to do searching and sorting and things there. So the important thing is that you can set up this ability to save the location, but you have to go in and set up your location fields. Now, alternatively, if you're not tracking the latitude and longitude, but let's say someone is collecting address information, you can actually have it geocode the address. And what's really cool about that is that you can select your address controls on your form, and then it will automatically do a geocode and put into the latitude and location information. And there's some details here, which is really nice, because then what's great about this, and this is so cool, if you geocode it on the way in, then now that data is in the database. Whenever you want to show that on a map or do things like that, you don't have to re-geocode it. So you don't take a performance penalty, and also there's certain limitations on how many geocodes you can do through Google and the other services there. So that's the option. So you can actually just support and store the latitude and longitude information. But if you want to, if you're just collecting, say, address information on the user interface, you can do the geocode record. And that's the table properties that allows you to do that there. Now, only got a couple more minutes when I want to wrap it up so we can answer questions, but let me talk about media and other link files. Now, one of the cool things about Alpha is the ability for you to not only synchronize or capture, store, and synchronize text information, database information, but you can also capture images, audio, and video, and we have a full suite of capabilities that allow you to do that. And what's really nice about that is that you don't have to worry about how all that stuff works. Built into the list control is the media files management area. So in here, you can tell it, how do you want this external data, image files, audio, video, how do you want to handle it? First, you can tell it, am I going to my server, back to the Alpha server, or am I going to use Amazon S3? And again, the S3 is a feature of one of the enterprise level, so you have to check your value, but you can go right to the server if you want to. You can then set up the target field name, which allows you to create a field name, the target file name, excuse me. So you can tune up what the name of the file is once it's stored on the server. So you can manipulate that to make it unique or do whatever you want to do from that standpoint there. We can also display progress bars. We can do some JavaScript before and ever. And this is really important right here. And this is like a huge monster checkbox. Much like saying I want to persist data to local, this is big. Because what I can do is automatically download media files and other link files when populating the list. This is cool, guys. This is so neat. Because let's say, and we have a client, they service cellular systems, meaning all the hardware, software, data centers, etc. Each morning, their techs wake up, they hit their phone, they are downloaded a set of work orders for the day, saying, okay, here's your work orders. It includes geographical information, routing information, everything they need. But another more important thing they need is when they actually arrive at the site, they need all the documentation that is required for them to achieve their work. So what they do is on the back end, when they set up a work order, they'll actually attach files saying, here's a PDF, which is a map of the data center. Here's a PDF, which is a manual for the type of equipment they're going to be working on out in the field. And they populate that into the data on the back end. And when the work order comes down, it has a secondary list that says, what are my associated files? And so therefore it downloads those associated files automatically, and then when the person is out in the field, when they're working at the site, they have all this resource material for them. And this could also be images, whatever happens to be PDFs. So that's a hugely powerful one right here called automatically download media files and other linked files. Once you enable that, if you have linked files in your list control, it's going to automatically bring all that down as external files that are available to the person on the mobile phone. So this is called the PhoneGap media files. It does require PhoneGap because PhoneGap is what opens up that ability to use the local file system to store data. A really powerful, cool thing about that is you can then store megs and megs and megs of data. You're not limited to a small set of data. And in fact, we're not going to cover it today, but the newest iteration allows you to actually store this data now in the file system when you're doing PhoneGap versus local storage. Before, when you had a list control and it brought down data, you were kind of, and it wasn't external data like the media files, etc. You were limited by the size of the local storage, like up to 5 megs or so, I think larger on Chrome, but you still have certain limitations. In the newest release, and again, we won't cover it here, you can actually update it so that if you build this under PhoneGap, then what it will do is bring down that list control information and store it on the file system. Now you have a massive amount of data that's available, and that's really cool because it allows you to use larger and larger data sets out in the field that people can edit, update, modify, and then synchronize back into it. But do realize the bigger your data sets are, the longer sync times become, etc. So you have to be reasonable. I mean, we're smart about it, but sometimes it gets, slower and slower, so you have to be careful on that. So that's, again, the media files that's here in the phone, and again, it requires PhoneGap, but if you enable that, it handles all those pieces there, and you're good to go. So that's a kind of a more detailed overview of the detail view. Again, a detail view doesn't exist other than in the list control. When you enable your list properties, you get this here where you can map your fields, set up your table properties, your sync things, do your customizations, set it up so you can capture external data, and also very nicely is submit location information and data and capture all that offline from there. So as you can see, a very rich set of functionality in here. These are kind of the high-level things that we cover. There's a lot more detailed things you can do. Basically anything that happens, you've got a hook to be able to handle. But those are the big ones in terms of what people have asked me about, of how do you handle offline detail view operation within the system from there. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back to Dave for any kind of questions. Hopefully I haven't lost everybody.
I hope not, but I don't see a lot of questions, but I do see a lot of people out there today.
I know.
So quite a few. So if you have questions,
don't make us start saying demerits. We will do it.
No,
don't cross us.
Submit your questions. We do have a few, and we'll get started.
Excellent.
And the first one has to do with the After Synchronize event. It looked like there were 2 events in After Synchronize. There was After Synchronize versus After Synchronize record.
Okay, so this is after a full synchronization.
Okay.
So that's the whole kit and caboodle. And this right here will be called for each record. So the idea is you can get down to a finer level of control. So on Synchronize gives you the whole boat, saying I've synchronized 5 records, here you go. And if you actually look inside the function prototype, you can actually get all, it basically gives you an array of records that have been synchronized that you can hand on. And that's the one you mainly use there. But if I do an after synchronize, let's go here and show the function prototype. In this case, you're getting one composite record. And by the way, a composite record could include, let's say if you had 3 lists with like customers, orders, and order line items, it's going to give you whatever got synchronized for that change. So like if you added a order item to an order that's there, it's going to give you all that information so you can tell, oh, an order item has been updated for an order for this customer. So you get that. And that's why they call it a composite record, because it's the sum total of those relationships in there. But again, this one's going to be called individually, so you can go through each of these individually. And you'll notice e.data has all the information about that composite record. In the other one, you're basically going to be given a list of everything, and then you can run through it there. Performance-wise, I don't think there's a big difference between them. It's more of just how you prefer operating, either on a single record at a time or running through multiple records at one time. And that's the difference between the two of them here.
Great. Another person asks, and this is sort of an aesthetics, but a cool aesthetics question, is there a way to get the list control button to animate when the user clicks on it to show that it's been pressed?
Oh, okay. So these buttons right here?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And the answer is yes. It's going to take a little JavaScript, but what's great about this is that, like for instance, when I say synchronize, it's running this little piece of JavaScript. Well, what I can do, actually the way I kind of do it is this. Here's how I would anticipate doing it, is that, oh, this is one of the older ones. Let me go ahead and bear with me, everybody. Let me go ahead and create new.
Sure.
Go in here, UX, and I'm going to create a template here, and I want to show you the control bar. So remember, the control bar is that great place you can have at the top or the bottom that shows you what's going on here. So I have a control bar layout here, and I could have like a synchronization little indicator right here. Now the cool thing about it is that control bars can handle items, and items can be just straight HTML, but they can also be GIFs. So there's no reason why you can't use animated GIFs in your system. So you can create an item called like an animated GIF of, say, the synchronization is going around in a circle saying it's being synchronized at that point. And then what you can do is in your button, you can call and say show, in the control bar, you can say show that image. And then that image will be shown in the control bar. And then after the synchronization is done, you can then say, okay, stop showing that image, put the status. So you can swap images. You can do that in the control bar. You can actually do that on the button, because you can actually write a little piece of JavaScript to switch out the inner HTML for the button text itself, which include a little image if you wanted there. One other option you can do, which I find is pretty handy, is I could put in a container here, okay, and in that container I can put in then a image. That image could be a animated image, like a GIF, and then what I can do is show and hide this container after a person hits a button, and then that container will show, and then all of a sudden an image will become visible on the client side. And this is the cool thing, it's on the client, so you don't have to worry about the server. And then when that image is shown, since it's a animated image, it's going to be there doing a little loop or a circle or whatever you happen to. This is actually really simple, because to do that, you just, you can tell it to hide and show this container, and it just does it on the client really quickly there. Now again, the trick is, once you show this, you also have to make sure that you hide it. So you have to understand after it occurs, you need to do it. Now the cool thing with the list control is in here, if we go to the list properties, let's go to the detail view, we have client-side events. And you'll notice in here we have a ton of events. So we can have right before synchronize list batch start. So this is going to be starting a batch. Actually, let's see if there's another one on before. Let's just type sync. Okay. Okay. So maybe I do it on can sync after, I can sync. Okay, here you want to do it on can sync. What this means is that it's checked everything and said, yes, I'm ready to go. I can synchronize. And in here, you could put in your little code that could say, you know, show graphic. And that would obviously JavaScript that you'd want to do that there. And remember, you can use actually, why don't I go ahead and show you here? You can use action JavaScript right in here to say create that JavaScript to say show that container. And then after synchronization is done, after synchronize list, you could put in the other piece of JavaScript that hides or changes that image back to a static image. So the cool thing about that is that you don't actually put it on the button, you put it in the events, so therefore you could have 5 buttons that trigger this event, and then the list itself is going to say, oh, I'm about to synchronize, oh, let me run this JavaScript, update the user, then it does its thing, and then after it's done, list controls, I'm done, and runs that little JavaScript there. So I tend to find this is a very simple way to do it. I would definitely look at putting any of those indicators in the control bar. It keeps your user interface clean, and the control bar is really, if you look at your phone, what does your phone have at the top? It has your power, what's your signal. In fact, when it's talking and doing stuff, you're going to see a little thing going around and around on my iPhone that says it's communicating to a back-end data source or whatever it happens to be. So I would definitely looking at the control bar to show that kind of activity monitoring aspects, even though you could switch out the button, you could do anything you want there, up to you. It's your design choice there. And if you want more information about the control bar, we did a whole series about 2 months ago on how to create images and how to change them on the fly using control bar commands, and it's perfectly suited for this kind of requirement.
Cool. Related question to that, actually let me just find it real quick. Oh, one thing I did want to bring up is to take a look, besides using an animated GIF to make your buttons animate, is to use CSS transforms. They're worth taking a look at. And
Mr. Special Guy.
Yeah, Mr. Special Guy. Exactly.
Jeez.
Very, that seems to be the new cool way people are doing it. So your
That's what all the cool
basically
cats do and the cool kids.
Exactly. Your special script could say, change the class of this button to animate mode, and then when it's done, change it back to not animated. So CSS transforms.
Now the question I have is that supported on all? Is that like only on certain browsers, or
very widely supported now?
Okay, and I do understand this is becoming very popular. Yep. I think Google of all people are pushing it. I think things like that. But here I want to say one other thing. You can also use SVG animation. And therefore you could have an animated SVG icon stored in your app and then just say show that SVG icon, because SVG can be animated, and there's some tools out there that are available, and also pre-made SVG animations that are out there. So I'm always careful about what I click on, but I've seen this before. But the cool thing about SVG is that it's very small. It's just a little piece of text, and it's got really cool animations there. But check out both of them. We can handle both of the pieces there. Let's see, it's just taking a moment here. Show these things, come on. And actually what's kind of cool is in here on these things, they actually show you the HTML, the SC. So, but definitely I think it sounds like this is going to become more of the dominant. The nice thing is it taps into everybody who knows CSS. So if you know CSS, you can do it. The nice thing about SVG, though, is that it is vector, so therefore it'll expand and shrink based on the size of your screen, so it always looks really good. But I give you those options.
Fantastic. Here's someone who wrote in early, so we'll give him priority. And
yes.
It has to do with, he has currently has an application, which I'm assuming is a web application, and he's building a separate project that's going to be a mobile application.
Yes.
So he's using security on his main application, but he wants to use the same security tables on the mobile app. Can you do it?
Yes.
And okay. Kind of how do you do it? I don't know that we can get it all explained in this time. But
no, but I'll give you the pointers here. So,
great.
You'll notice in here that, and this is why this is actually where it comes into it, is that Alpha, this is called a workspace. So everything that I'm doing is in a single workspace. But a workspace can be subdivided into what are called projects. And projects are basically just separate files. So actually, remember my little trick here. I want to go look at the folder this is in. I can go here. It'll open up the Windows Explorer. It's a tip and trick from there. So you'll notice in demonstration I have demonstration web projects, and in there I have 2 subfolders. So you'll notice I have my project here called default. So if I go in there, I'm going to see all of my UXs plus all the secondary information in there. So all of this stuff you see is here. Now if I go in here and go to test project, you'll see, and the idea is this, maybe my default is my web project and test project is my my mobile project, which is how I do it because they usually have a little different characteristics. So if I go back up here and go into test project, you'll see all I really have is that one component right here. Now, when you set up, when you're in a project, when you click web security, you're setting the web security for that project. So therefore, if I go through here, set up all my web security, then I go to test project and click web security, I have to start over. And so therefore, what's going to happen is that basically you're going to duplicate your web security. But here's the benefit of that. In this project here, I'm going to have a set of alpha DAO connection strings. And what I want to do is I want to set up my connection for the security system as a connection string. Then once I've done there, when I go set up my web security here, I can then set my connection string to go to a SQL database and then point to that connection string that I need to. So therefore, the security system is going to look at that connection string to go get access to the users, the groups, etc. Now, once I've got all that set up properly here, then I can go into my other project, make sure my alpha DAO connection string has the same connection string, go into web security, set it up here, but I'm using the same information. So therefore, my web security is pointing to the same connection string for both projects. And therefore, when I deploy it, then they're going to use that connection string from there. And that's how we do our projects there. So the answer is absolutely break it into the different projects here. There's just a little setup at the beginning when you set up your alpha DAO connection strings. And the cool thing about connection strings is you can sit there and copy this, go into your other project, create a new one, and paste it right in, you're good to go. But you will definitely have to go into web security and set it up for each one of them. And when you do that, you want to make sure that your connection string is used at the same time for the tables. There's one other really important thing when you set up security. When you're saving passwords, you obviously want to encrypt those. So when I do the password encryption, I put in what's called a password encryption key, and it should just be some, very random number here. But you have to make sure this password encryption key is the same one for both of your projects. Because if you don't, what will happen is the security system will talk to the table, but then it will try and decode the password, and the password will be like, I'm sorry, you don't have the right encryption string or decryption string, so therefore it doesn't work. So you have to be very careful that you create your password encryption key, store it, and then use it when you set up the security there. So long story short, do set them up as separate projects. Make sure your connection string for your security system is set up in the same, so you set that up for both projects, and then the web security. Now, once you've done all that, the rest is cake. You're just off to the races, doing what you need to do. It's kind of an initial setup piece there, and therefore you know that your mobile device and your back-end system are both going to use the same database, the same security configuration, same groups, etc., and you're going to be off the races and you'll be in really good shape.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we have 2 back-end database questions. The first one is, let's say you have a list or something, and you have, and it's got multiple child tables. So you have, customers, and under customers you have orders, and under orders you have items. If you were to delete the customer, would it automatically delete the child records underneath? And how is that decided?
Oh, okay. Well, often when I need to enforce that level of functionality, I actually do it in the database itself, because that's going to be your most secure system that you can do that. So let me go ahead and go down to demonstration right here. So when I create my database, I'll have, say, maybe orders and order details. So the idea is when I want to delete an order, I want to make sure I don't have orphan order details. So what you actually do is you create a relationship between these two that defines that foreign key relationship. So for instance, order details always has order ID, which points to orders. And when I define that relationship, I can invoke what's called a cascade function. So let me go into my orders here. This is, by the way, Navicat. You can use any third-party tool here. So I can go to design table, and in that table, I can create what are called foreign keys. So the idea between the foreign keys is that, for instance, orders and customers, orders and employees, orders and ship, the relationship between this table and other pieces there. For instance, order details, let me go into order details. If you'll notice in here, I have a foreign key from the orders to the order ID. So therefore, I'm relating all of my orders, and I'm telling it, you know, what is the table, what is the field to do it. Now you'll notice, and this is in Navicat, you'll notice over here a on delete and on update. So in this particular, and this is just standard SQL supports this, so all tools will, their interface may be different, but I can go in here to order details and orders. So this is basically the relationship between my order details and order story. I can go here to on delete and do cascade. Now what happens is then when a order is deleted, the database will look at this relationship and say, oh, I have a cascade. I'm going to go ahead and automatically find any order details associated with this order and delete them. So the cool thing about that is you can make it the database's responsibility to keep things cleaned up. So therefore you can put in these relationships and enforce cascade relationships that say on the back end. Now the cool thing about that is Alpha, when you delete a, let's say a customer on the list on, let's say you had that customer orders and order IDs that are order details. What you could do is say, okay, I'm going to delete this customer on the mobile device. And when you delete that, the system will automatically hide that customer, and by de facto in the other list controls you won't be able to see them, but they'll still be there. Then you're going to do a sync. That sync will go up and submit to the database saying, hey database, the person has asked for this customers to be deleted. So the database says, great, I'm going to delete that person. So it goes to execute the delete on the customer table, and then it goes, oh, you know what? I've got a cascade on orders and order details. Or, you know, so I'm going to go on the database side, I'm just going to go ripple, 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 delete the, you know, find all the order details, delete them out, find all the orders, delete them, delete the customer. And it takes care of ensuring integrity so that if something fails in between, it, you know, does all that for you. You don't have to worry about that for you. Now, what's great about that is then when you say synchronize, well, Alpha is just going to say, oh, just give me the data that's currently available in the back end. It says, for instance, oh, I don't want that customer anymore, so it cleans out the lists on the mobile device. So you don't have to worry about any of that plumbing. We're going to take care of it for you. So I highly recommend that you put it in the database here, and the reason for that is that it's hyper reliable. It's going to happen. It's standard SQL nomenclature. Therefore, you don't have a lot of orphan stuff there. The only time I would say it's different is that when you delete a customer, maybe you have to do some secondary things. Then you may want to add some scripts maybe in your on Synchronize to do that. But often it's just, hey, I just need to clean this stuff out. So a bit of a long-winded kind of response, but I would try and use that foreign key relationship with a cascade event, and that will do it for you automatically. And then our list controls on Synchronize are just going to pattern and match what's in the local or in the database, and you'll be good to go. Then your life is really, you know, most of the heavy lifting is taken care of by the database, and off to the races there. I'm not going to save this because I don't want to adjust my order stuff there.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So now the second database question has to do with synchronizing. So if you are synchronizing and your back end, say under list control, is SQL Server, what happens if SQL Server is busy with another transaction? How does the synchronization handle that?
Well, when the synchronization occurs, we're just making standard database calls to the server. So therefore, the server's in the middle of something. Synchronization is just going to wait and then say, okay, server, let's go and have that, just wait till that occurs. Then when the server is available, the SQL server, then it will execute and then it will report back. Now, if the synchronization fails, Alpha will preserve the changes on your local device and reattempt it. So Alpha is smart enough to say, you know what, I couldn't finish this synchronization, and you can actually put in hooks to see what the errors are, etc. And then the next time it goes to synchronize, it's going to retry it because all that data is still sitting on the list control on the mobile device. So let's say I've gone in, made edits on a record in that mobile or in that list control. Then the next time I go to sync, it says, oh, you know what? I've still got these changes that need to happen. Let's give those a try. And then once it's successful, Alpha will report back to the mobile device in that list saying that this record has now been successfully synchronized, so ignore it going forward unless it becomes dirty or you need to, the server needs to make a change or something like that. So Alpha will take care of that heavy lifting for you. So if your SQL server is heavily loaded, then you'll be in a situation where it's going to get queued up. The Alpha server is going to try and connect to the SQL server, do its job, but if it times out or whatever, it's going to report that back so we don't corrupt data or don't have any problems like that. Now, that tells you one other thing is that if that's going to happen a fair amount, then you really need to think about your synchronization strategy. When you're out in the field, you just want to collect this data and get it up there. Mainly, it's usually data collection where you're pushing data to the backend server. So you may want to think about having a staging table that the stuff goes into a staging table that's then synchronized via triggers or whatever to the other pieces. There's different strategies to it, especially if it's like an input only where you just have people out in the field collecting data. You don't have to worry much about conflicts, so you want to keep the architecture really simple and flow it into where it needs to go from there. But I found that also the reality is that SQL and stuff like that is, unless it's something like a massive stored procedure, things happen so fast on the servers and the record locks are so short that it kind of gets buried in the noise of literally the synchronization time, meaning the communication from the mobile device up to the server and back. Now down the road, as we'll see, that could come back to bite us because obviously now we're going to 5G and synchronization speeds are going to be like at basically almost gigabit speeds. So that opens up a whole thing. Then you go to in-memory databases, etc. But I go off track here. So realize though that Alpha is smart enough to make sure your data is okay. It'll retry the synchronization if it doesn't work. And you shouldn't really, I haven't seen many of those scenarios where you have the SQL Server database actually inhibiting the operation of it. There's so many other slower points before all that happens. It usually is a non-issue.
Excellent. One more question here, and that is, how do you upload an image to Amazon and store the path in a database?
Good point. Well, let me go ahead and do it real quick. I'm going to add a button in here. When I add that button, I'm going to go here to my click event, double click on it. By the way, I could double click on here. I then click, sorry, I'm going a little too fast, but I want to get it done in the next few minutes. I click Add New Action in Action JavaScript, and I have something here called Image Capture for List Detail View. Don't have any data-bound foils, so let me go ahead and do this. I'm going to, actually, you have to have in there, let's say, oh, you're doing a, let me add that button again, I'm sorry. Image upload, there we go. Okay, so this one, let's go to PhoneGap. Okay, so this is when I want to do an image capture, and this will happen either to grab it from the phone's camera roll or the camera itself. Again, since we're talking about offline image capture, that does not work with HTML. It's a PhoneGap kind of deal. And you'll notice it says move file to permanent storage. And this is where you go in and put these things. But now what you can do is you can do client-side events here where you can actually set a field. So you can say dialog.object.set value of a field to be the file name, etc. if you want to. Let's see, that's PhoneGap messages. Let's see, capture. That's the option. I'm trying to think. I think it had in here where it actually asks you which field to put the information on there. Oh, yeah, the image gets for the device. The code is done using that. Okay, yeah. So in this case, you use that JavaScript event after the image is executed to then update your field with the field name there. I'm trying to think, Dave, is there another one? Let me try here. See, that's image capture for a list detail view, but it wants a data-bound image field. So that's where you have, for instance, you're storing the image directly in the database from the standpoint there. So let's do this. I'm gonna do a little more research and find the reality, or find the real answer to you. But it does allow you, when you do that image capture, you can set it up with JavaScript to then you know the name of the image. You can then store it in that field when you do that image capture kind of scenario.
Excellent. Well, that'll be a great question to start with for next Wednesday.
Okay,
So
cool.
Anyway, we are out of time. Thank you so much to everyone who asked questions and just showed up today. Thank you, Dion, for presenting.
My pleasure.
See you next week. This session was recorded. You'll be able to find a copy of this recording at videos.alphasoftware.com. Just do a search for QA. You should be able to find it. Thanks again. Hope to see you next week. Take care and goodbye.